We have several more NHL free agent signings to discuss today, including guys like Radek, Faksa, Jimmy Vesey, as well as Brandon Montour, and a whole lot more. We'll jump into that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. I wanted to recap today some of the latest free agent signings. We've seen quite a few NHL UFA and RFA players sign new deals. So let's take a second here and get up to date with all the latest contract signings. Now, one of the bigger ones was the Dallas Stars locking up forward Radek Faksa to a 5-year contract via a $3.25 million per season. I mean, that's a pretty valuable contract. I think he was a pretty big part of their playoff run all the way to the Stanley Cup final. Fax has proven to be a pretty reliable two-way forward, pretty solid guy. So overall, I must say that's a contract I like. Nothing too surprising there. They do have some other RFAs as well that they need to take care of, including like Gurianov, for example. So I do expect Dallas to get those done as well. But certainly a pretty solid signing overall. Radek Faksa here on a pretty team-friendly contract. The Winnipeg Jets continue to rebuild their blue line, signing veteran Derek Forbort to a 1-year, $1 million contract. Obviously pretty low risk. The Winnipeg Jets certainly are a team who was really focused on their blue line heading into this offseason, and adding a guy like Forbort's pretty low risk. Obviously, last year we saw him play between LA and Calgary, and Forbort should be able to play, a pretty reliable bottom pair minutes for Winnipeg. I mean, like I said, he's a player that's going to be under contract for 1 year, so pretty low risk, and she really has nothing but potential upside here for Winnipeg. The Detroit Red Wings have signed forward Vladislav Nemestikov to a 2-year contract at $2 million per year. Now, that's not a huge surprise to see him go to Detroit for a variety of reasons. For one, obviously we know GM Steve Yzerman, quite familiar with this player from his time in Tampa where Nemestikov started. Obviously, Nemestikov is a player who can play up and down the lineup. Throughout his career, we've seen him play in the top line as a nice complementary winger. We've seen him be more of a middle six guy. He can penalty kill. He's got good speed. Obviously, he's a linkage to Detroit as well. Takes him back to his uncle Slava Kozlov, who used to play for the team. He spends a lot of his summers in Detroit. So there's a lot of connections there with Nemestikov to the Red Wings. And another guy who's got a fair bit of NHL experience now, who can play like a middle six role, kill penalties. Pretty low risk, cheap contract. So this is another deal for Steve Yzerman here that I must say I'm quite fond of. I mean, obviously, he'll be joining some other players that they signed, like Bobby Ryan, and of course, Nemestikov spent some time in Ottawa, so they'll know each other as well. And I just really like the idea of how Yzerman has gone about this offseason to kind of rebuild this Red Wing team to be a little bit better. Obviously, they have a lot of prospects that need to take some time on, and they've brought in some good veteran character players, many of which who can play on special teams as well to kind of help this team go through some growing pains. I don't expect the Red Wings to be drastically better next year, but they should be a little bit more respectable than they were this past season. The St. Louis Blues have signed veteran forward Kyle Clifford to a 2-year deal at $1 million per season. Of course, Clifford was a player traded from the Kings to the Maple Leafs last year. Looked as though he might re-sign in Toronto, but they decided to go in a different direction. Once they brought in Wayne Simmons, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that Clifford likely wasn't returning. Obviously, a team like St. Louis is a good landing spot for him. A team who likes to be a big, strong, physical team. Of course, won the Stanley Cup 2 seasons past, so he'll fit in nicely there. He's got a lot of pedigree himself from his time with Los Angeles, so pretty solid bottom six signing here by Doug Armstrong and the Blues. We saw a variety of third-string goaltenders be signed by teams on 1-year contracts at $700,000. We saw the New Jersey Devils bring in Scott Wedgwood. The Calgary Flames signed Louis Domingue. And the Pittsburgh Penguins signed Maxime Lagacé, many of which, like I said, they'll be mostly third-string goalies who will play in the American Hockey League, but very well could be their first call-up option if these teams end up with any kind of goaltending injuries throughout the season. The Colorado Avalanche have re-signed Val Nichushkin on a 2-year deal at $2.5 million per season. Of course, he went to Colorado last year after getting bought out in Dallas after a disastrous season, like a really disastrous season. But he bounced back pretty nicely. This past year was a good fit in Colorado. Obviously, they felt the same way about him and have rewarded him here with a 2-year extension. So another low-risk contract, not a lot of money, but he's certainly a player who fit nicely and bounced back and deserved an opportunity. The Washington Capitals have also signed a pair of fairly cheap contracts for UFA defensemen, including Trevor Van Riemsdyk and Paul LeDuc. They both get 1-year contracts. one-way deals as well at $700,000 for Ledoux and $800,000 for Van Riemsdyk. Obviously, TVR came over from the Carolina Hurricanes, who had more than enough defensemen as well, so not a huge shocker that he didn't return there, but certainly a couple of more extra options for the Caps for their third pair option for defense. The Buffalo Sabres have made a pair of signings besides the big one of Taylor Hall that we reported on last night. Of course, Hall signed a one-year, $8 million deal, which is absolutely huge for Buffalo. Very, very surprising, mind you, and it'll be interesting to see if Hall stays longer term. But we know he's very fond of head coach Ralph Krueger from his time in Edmonton. It's a great relationship, and I know Kevin Adams already made it clear that they are very interested in any longer term relationship with Hall. It's just going to be a matter of looking at an extension here as we get closer. But they gave Hall a no move and no trade clause as well. So clearly that's a sign that they want to keep him. But when it comes to the deadline, if they're out of contention, they very well could look to trade him to a contending team and get back a pretty good package of players. So it might cost them a lot of money, but it gives them an experiment to play with Jack Eichel to see if it works. It keeps Eichel happy, gives Hall an opportunity to bounce back, and no matter if it's with Buffalo or somebody else, to get a much bigger contract next year. But they've since gone and signed a few other players as well, including defenseman Brandon Montour, who gets a one-year deal as an RFA just shy of $4 million. Now, this is a signing that I'm not overly surprised about, to be honest, because Montour is still a player I feel is likely to be traded. I'm not sure that he really fits with Krueger's system. Didn't have a great season last year. There's a possibility another team in the right role could find that Montour that was more of what you saw in Anaheim. But so far, things in Buffalo haven't really worked out. So this makes a lot of sense from a player's perspective. He gets a one-year deal, which essentially walks him right to unrestricted free agency, because he was awfully close to that already. So he can be a UFA next offseason, which is great for him. If things don't get better and he doesn't enjoy his role anymore and he wants to leave, then that's an option. And as a team as well, you're not committed to a long-term expensive contract. At the same time, if they're out of it come playoff time, at the deadline, they could trade him, move on that way, instead of trading him as an RFA this past offseason. So either way, it's a pretty low-risk deal, and we'll see if he can play better under Ralph Krueger than he did last year. Now, the other signing for the Sabres, but they signed former Jets and Vegas Golden Knights center iceman Cody Eakin. Cody Eakin signs a 2-year contract at $2.25 million. So they now have a lot of depth at center. We already know, obviously, they have Jack Eichel being the top center, but obviously before this offseason, they were trying to run with a guy like Casey Middlestat and other players at that number 2 center spot. Even Marcus Johansson played some center last year, which didn't really work out well. Now they traded for Eric Stahl. Now they bring in Cody Eakin, who can be a number 3 or number 4 center. You can still give an opportunity to guys like Casey Middlestat or Dylan Cousins as they come in. Maybe take some pressure off, put them on the wing. Either way, they have plenty of options now. They can let the veterans play center, groom the younger guys, and see if that might be a better way to go about developing their team for the future. But they're certainly going to be a stronger team for sure. I'm just not completely convinced they're going to go all the way to the playoffs unless they do something about their goaltending, which is one area that we have not seen them address here as of yet. And of course, as I mentioned as well, Jamie Vesey has officially signed with the Maple Leafs. One-year deal at $900K. Obviously, Vesey was a player the Leafs were extremely interested in when he was first coming out of college. Ultimately, he chose the New York Rangers. There was a lot of talk. The Leafs were really hard after him at the time. There was even some information from TSN insider Darren Dreger suggesting that if they signed Vesey, that they were going to trade William Nylander. Well, obviously, they're probably pretty glad that they did not do that. It did not work out. They still get Vesey. It's a little late, but it's a lot cheaper, and he can play a different role. I can't help but wonder now if this might mean a trade for a guy like a Pierre Engvall or somebody else who would play a similar role in the bottom 6, who now Vesey's going to be less expensive, and every dollar is going to count when it comes to the Maple Leafs here. So a bit of a surprise signing. I was at first kind of thinking, why would they want Vesey? And it might be more about cost savings than anything else. They can sign him for less than some of their existing players, and it very well could prove to be a wise move. I mean, obviously, they still have to look after Ilya Mikheyev, who's an RFA, which could end up going to arbitration. So we'll see about that. But obviously, another interesting signing from the Leafs that we did not expect to see. So those are all your signing updates for now, at least as I record this video. I'm sure there's going to be more here and throughout the day. So stay tuned to Top Shelf Hockey. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news from around the NHL. So let me know down in the comments your thoughts on these signings, and we can discuss further. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.